Ben Carson went on a conservative radio show to talk about health care. Let's listen.
You know, by the time we spend $1 billion on a website and, $848 million here and $300 million there and all of these millions and billions of dollars, we should have just paid for for their medical needs.
Absolutely. I would have taken care of it quite effectively. But as I've said many times before, it wasn't really about health care, it's about control. And, if there's any decency left in our government, they should be saying, okay, yes, we do need to at least have some mechanism for access to basic care for everybody. That's a reasonable expectation. It's not a right, but it is a responsibility for responsible people, and we are a responsible people. But how do you get there? The best way to get there is through the system that was set up. The system that was set up was a representative system. So your solutions should be something that represent all the people. The Constitution says one of the purposes in the preamble, it says, is to promote the general welfare. What that means is that we do things that help everybody. We don't pick this group and say, we're going to help you at the expense of this group over here. That's not promoting the general welfare.
Yeah.
So we're actually violating the Constitution in that sense.
Okay, those were the most confused remarks I've ever heard on the issue of healthcare. First of all, to the idea that it's wrong for this group over here to help that group over there, then every aspect of every government is wrong because governments run on taxes, and that's exactly what you do with every single government program about anything, including the cops, including the fire department, including the military. And that's how any insurance system works. When you pay money into Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or Humana, and then they pay it out to somebody right now who has a kidney disease or has cancer, that's redistribution of wealth. But it's redistribution of wealth through a private corporation as opposed to through a government. And when a government does it, you don't need to have a profit motive where there's a cash-sucking middleman. When a private corporation does it, you do. So he's just confused that you can't do the redistribution. Well, then every facet of every government is done, and every facet of every private insurance corporation is done. And also, he's making the argument that to have universal health care violates the general welfare clause of the Constitution. No, if anything, I would argue the exact opposite. A violation of the general welfare clause of the Constitution would be to not have a universal health care system. But then he also contradicts himself again when he says at one point, well, yes, it's reasonable for people to expect a basic care system to be set up for everybody. Okay, so that is reasonable. Before the other comments show that you don't believe that, but that comment shows that you do believe that. And then he says, well, we should set up a system that can cover everybody or basic care for everybody through the old system. So you mean exactly what Obamacare did? You just described Obamacare to a T. You just described it perfectly. He's like, if only we could have some kind of universal care, but we do it through the private companies that already exist. That's exactly what Obamacare is. What do you think the individual mandate is? It says we're not going to change the system. We're not going to start from scratch. We're not going to have the government be the single payer. What we're going to do is keep the health insurance companies intact and mandate by law that anybody who buys health care needs to go through the private insurance companies. So you want Obamacare. And by the way, it does make sense that this proposal was originally a Republican proposal. Richard Nixon was the first person to propose an Obamacare-like system. Then Bob Dole did it as well in 1996. The Heritage Foundation in the 1990s released policy papers explaining how their counter-argument and counter-policy to Clinton Care was essentially Obamacare, was the early forms of Obamacare. Chuck Grassley supported it. Newt Gingrich supported it. All these different Republicans supported it. So see, when you catch these guys off guard and they're not monitoring themselves, they end up telling you what they really think. And what they really think is an Obamacare system is exactly what I want. Unless he just means making an even dumber point, which is, well, we should just go back to the old system, period. Because if that's the case, you don't get the goal of everybody having basic care. Because in the old system, 45,000 people died every single year because they don't have access to basic health care. So if you want to go back to that system, fine. That system was the laughingstock of the world. And it was barbaric, and it was a savage system. Every other modern industrial nation, how many people die because they don't have health care? 0. In the U.S., 45,000, and medical bills are the number one cause of bankruptcy. So if you want a utopian system and that's your utopia, you might want to look up the definition of what utopia is supposed to be.